Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this special meeting of council, and all on St. Patrick's Day. One of us dressed accordingly. Uh, I'm going to call our meeting to order and begin by reading our land acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging with respect that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation. We also recognize the Métis whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. We extend our gratitude to all Anishinaabe and Métis peoples and their descendants, past, present, and future, who continue to care for and inhabit these lands and to tend these waters. Now I'll just ask you to join me in a moment of silent reflection on our business today. Thank you very much. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? I see no indication, but if it does occur to you, just bring it forward at that time. Thank you. Public participation. We do have a deputation this afternoon, and I'd like to call on Patricia Grab to join us at the podium, and welcome, Patricia.
Thank you. My son and I moved to this beautiful community about 9 months ago. We absolutely have always dreamed of living in Meaford. It's a beautiful town. So thank you for having me as a part of this place. We live on Centennial Heights Court, which is a lovely street sort of in the east end of town. And when we bought the house, we were sort of advised by the neighbors that it was on the books for the road to be improved. It had been for years. That was the neighbor's belief. And living on the street, it's like driving an obstacle course last summer, but particularly with this winter, there are at least 34 types of potholes, heaving, waffling, sections of curb that are cracked. And this is a street that has a number of people of age who live on it, including myself, and my son has some mobility issues as well. So I'm here today. I've sent via Alex some pictures of the street, which I know that she shared amongst the council, to ask you to consider in your budget plans if there can be finances put aside to go towards the resurfacing of the road. There's so many potholes, so many divots. Some are greater than 3 inches deep. Some of them are actually longer than 4 feet wide now that the snow has left. Some are up to 6 feet long. And my hope is that as you consider the costs and the things that you have ahead of you for this year, that you'll think of the cost of resurfacing. I did come hoping, I did some research. I used to work for the Ministry of Health to see if there was any grants that might be available. And unfortunately, there's nothing that I could see through my website scrutinization that would help to defray the costs. I recognize it would be a big expense for this community. But I'm just here today to bring to your attention our street, knowing that because of all this, it does affect people who do wish to walk. Again, a number of people of age, there are no sidewalks. But as it is at court, if there ever was some problems with being able to access the street because a portion of the street was not navigable, you're not able to navigate it. It would make it hard for emergency vehicles to get down the street as well. There's only one way in and one way out. So I don't know if you have any questions for me, but I'm just here to hope that you will think about Centennial Heights Courts in your deliberations today.
Well, you may have struck it lucky because we do have someone who could at least maybe tell us more about where it does fit in the plans. I know I featured it on my Facebook page, I think in my first year of council, because every year at this time it does what it's doing right now.
Yeah.
But anyway, Jeff, could you perhaps tell us a bit about where it fits in our infrastructure plans?
Yep, sure. Through your worship. Currently right now it's scheduled to be in the 2027 project year.
Okay.
With that said, there's some underground infrastructure that isn't tied to that scope of work at this current time, and there needs to be, so there will be some evaluation before then, but right now it is scheduled for 2027.
2027. So I can go back to the street and give that sort of as a a likely or a
There's
definite
definitely gonna
targeted
be
date?
some more review because there's a lot of underground stuff. That's what's causing all the heaving in the ground, and stormwater management is a big issue there with all the homes. Sub pumping out of the homes out to the
Yes,
roads,
that's
and there's not a
true.
lot of drainage, so that's adding to the issues up
Yeah.
there. So yes, there's definitely gonna be some further review on that.
Okay,
But right now it is scheduled.
for 2027. Okay, all right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Patricia. And now I'm going to call on Nisa Cornforth, who has an interesting presentation for us.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of council. I'm here today to share some questions from Ms. Pesnick's grade 5 class at Georgian Bay Community School. They have been learning about municipal government and the role that council plays in shaping our community. As part of this, the students wrote letters expressing their ideas, concerns, and questions. It's a wonderful opportunity to hear directly from some of the youngest members of our community, and I've taken the liberty of summarizing their letters and into a few questions, and I'm here to present those to you now. Question 1 regarding Blue Dolphin Water Park and beaches. Students have had some big ideas for Meaford's waterfront. Suggestions include more change rooms, a family changing room, a bigger pool with a water slide, and a full water park. Others would love more sandy beach areas while keeping rocks for jumping. The question is, how can the municipality decide which upgrades to prioritize?
Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, Anissa. And so, wow, a huge thank you to the awesome students who shared their ideas and making our waterfront even better. And we certainly love their creativity and their passion. But when we think about upgrading parks and beaches, we have to consider a few things like budget, how much it costs, safety, the environment, and then of course what the community wants. But about the beaches, removing rocks is a tricky job, but so we need experts to figure out, how to do it safely while keeping the some areas fun for rock jumping and things of that nature. Our parks and recreation team, they're always looking for ways to make the waterfront better. So we will definitely take a close look at those suggestions. But of course, we want to make sure everyone, including kids and teens, have fun, safe places to enjoy. And these ideas matter. And we will certainly keep them in mind as we work to improve Meaford's outdoor spaces. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Question number 2 is about sidewalk safety. Bryn Lee is concerned about sidewalk safety, especially on routes to school. She suggests adding more sidewalks and better lighting since it gets dark early. How does the municipality decide where to add sidewalks and lights, and what can be done to improve safety for students?
Oh, Councillor Yurig.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Nisa, for bringing the question. And I'll echo Brandon. It's really great that the students are getting involved, and it's a very appropriate year to ask that question. Bryn Lee, thank you for that super important issue of sidewalk safety, especially for students walking to school. We know staying safe is a big deal, especially when the days get shorter in the fall and winter. When we decide where to add sidewalks and streetlights, we look at a few key things. How many people walk there, which areas need it most, like school routes, obviously, and how good the existing sidewalks are. Of course, we also have to think about the budget and long-term plans. For streetlights, we focus on spots where lots of people walk, especially in places that get really dark at night. We also work with the community to make sure we're making the best choices for everyone. Some ways we can make walking safer include adding more sidewalks, fixing up old ones, putting in extra streetlights, and even creating special walking zones in busy areas. We'll keep listening to the community and looking for ways to make things safer, especially for students walking to and from school. Thanks again for bringing this up, Brindley. We'll keep your ideas in mind as we work forward to make Meaford sidewalks safe and awesome for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 3 is about a soccer field. Tristan thinks Meaford could use a soccer field for local games and even a community team. What would the process be for looking into this? And are there any existing plans or opportunities to make it happen?
Deputy Mayor Keaveney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Nisa, for the question. And I want to tell you, Tristan, how grateful I am to you for bringing this forward. My sons loved playing soccer when they were your age. And when I had my business, I sponsored soccer teams for many years. So this is near and dear to my heart. So we love the idea, and having a special place for soccer could be really awesome for local games and even a community team. Before we can build a soccer field, though, we need to see how many people are interested. That means talking to the community to find out who would use it and what kind of programs they'd like. We might send out surveys or hold community meetings to get everybody's input. We also have to find the right space, figure out how much it's going to cost, and see if there are any grants or partnerships that could help to make it happen. Maybe there's even an existing space that we could turn into a soccer field. Working with local sports clubs or community groups could help bring this idea to life. Building a soccer field takes time and planning, but we love the suggestion and will definitely keep it in mind and look for ways to add more fun, active spaces in Meaford. Tristan, thanks so much again for your question and keep dreaming big.
And thank you very much.
And I'm assuming that the class is watching on YouTube.
They are watching today, yes.
Well, let's welcome them to our council meeting, and we're here every other week or more often, quite a bit more often. And so tune in anytime. We're glad to have you. And it's important that you do take an interest in how your community is run, because that's the very basis of democracy. And one of the things we really like about being Canadians is that we live in a true democracy. And so we have to keep it democratic. Thank you again, Nisa, for being the conduit for this meeting with the kids.
Thank you.
I did mention it was a special meeting, and the main reason it is special is because we're going to try and finalize our budget today. So all of us are sort of racing toward committee of the whole so that we can dig into this one final time. So we have left a few typical agenda items off. But with the council's approval, I think we'll just keep going. And the first item of business, go ahead, okay. The first item of business is a couple of bylaws. The first one, the recommendation is that bylaw 2025-11, being a bylaw to appoint an acting clerk, be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Can I have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Greenfield and Councillor Bell. Everyone has seen the bylaw. Any discussion? If not, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? Thank you very much. And the second one is the recommendation, be it resolved that bylaw 2025-12, being a bylaw to appoint an acting deputy clerk, be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. A mover and a seconder, Councillor Urick and Deputy Mayor Keaveney. Any discussion? All in favor? And that is carried. So that's a bit of housekeeping that we needed to do. And now I need a mover and seconder to go into committee of the whole. Councillor Forder and Councillor Greenfield. So we'll be moving to committee of the whole at 1:13 p.m. Did I call a vote there? I'm not sure if it did. Okay, let's have you go ahead, Valerie Manning, our acting CAO. Now, just while you're getting organized, I'm just going to thank you and the team so very much for this is version 3. It's been a long haul to get to our budget finalization this year, and we greatly appreciate the work of staff in getting us here. And we've got a full room of staff, which is something we don't always see, and it's nice to see. So I'm sure if we have any questions, we'll get the answers we're looking for today.
Okay, so we're going to start version 3, and we've summarized everything for you. If we could go to the first slide. So I just wanted to summarize where we've started. So We did a budget survey in the fall. We had version 1 brought to you in November of 24. Version 2 was brought to you beginning of the year around January. And now we're at version 3. So hopefully we're getting there. Is there any questions currently, like before we get into the meat of it, is there anything that you guys would like to say now before we start on the summary sheets that we have? Nope. Okay. So if we go, so currently, version 2, we ended up with 21,349,260, and that was down from our original one. We didn't even show version 1. We've just started with version 2 and went to version 3. So we've reduced our budget over the last month and a half by $1.4 million. So version 1, we left off. We started out with 15.78, and now we're down to 8.19, or now this is a rate increase. So at 7, we reduced it by 7.59. Our tax levy, or our including growth, it was dropped down to 13.61, and currently we sit at 6.16 tax levy, and that's our local levy. Our blended from version 1 or version 2, it was 9.46, and we're now at a blended rate of 4.72, which we've now reduced it down quite substantially from the beginning when we first started. Please interrupt if you have any questions on any of this stuff. The next slide is just a summary of our departments and our divisions. I'm not going to read everything off, but we're at the operating, and I can't read it. Operating currently is at a levy increase of 9.94, and our capital levy increase is 6.73. And there is in our capital, I believe, there's a couple of additional levies that we have as well. If we're looking at this slide, and this is where the additional levies come into play. So our additional levies that we show in there are an additional $200,000 for fire truck, and there's a couple of additional levies for Memorial Park and Harbor, where we budget to make them like a revenue neutral, doesn't affect the tax dollars. Also included in all of these numbers currently is our growth number of 352,000. Then I'm going to show you a breakdown of where our money is. This is more for information. I'm not going to talk to it too much. Same as the next slide, where our money is, where we're spending our money this year, and how we're allocating everything. And this is just basically for reference for the community. Our capital framework, and this is something we've talked about all along. So currently, in our budget currently, there's a framework of 1% roads, 1% bridges, and 0.5% facilities. I know throughout our discussions, this is something that we're going to bring back to you at a later date, where we discuss possibly next year's framework and see if there's more information that we can provide to you at that time. But currently, that's where we're sitting at. And this is the numbers that we have in our budget currently. So then we'll go to our updated tax levy. So currently, approximately $179,000 is 1% on a tax levy. Our growth number, as indicated before, is 352. So typically, I think in the past, we've used growth we've used it as kind of a number. Currently, in this budget, we're using it just to offset our tax increases as a whole. So currently, as I indicated before, our levy, current tax rate levy is 6.16. Our projected increase blended rate is 4.72. So that would mean a $600,000 house with a blended increase. It's estimated to be about $343 increase, or $29 per month. So if I summarize what's happened over, say, the last couple of months, during our budget deliberations for the operating day, we did discuss the HR, our salary grid review that we wanted to do, and we have budgeted that to come from reserves. We increased and added a reserve to our processing fees for waste of $120,000 to offset some of the costs in our waste. We removed some funding for beautification, but we still have money in there for flowers. And we removed the Pie Trail partnership of $2,000. That was on our operating day, budget day, February 4th. On capital day, we removed the street sweeper that was in capital. We removed the whole 200,000, but we added back in the operating side, $50,000 for repairs, because we know that it's getting older. We removed the server replacement for IT, and we did that because we knew that it doesn't need to be replaced this year. Trowbridge, we have reduced and moved $670,000 to next year, and so Trowbridge is one that we should maybe discuss a little bit. It is that we're still budgeting to take money for water and wastewater, because we need additional monies to cover the whole cost, because it's going to be a fairly substantial cost next year. Yeah, the other thing that we removed was $10,000 from waste as well. Or wastewater. And then we had a special budget day, and we've adjusted some stuff during the budget day related to wages. So currently we have a couple finance positions that we're allocating to refunding from reserves for this year. Because we're considering them to be a one-time cost, but I think over the year we'll decide at that time whether they're necessary or not necessary. Currently, I think this is the right solution. We've removed a full position of senior project manager. That might have to be revisited in the fall if it comes back that that department feels they need it, but that's when we would bring back reports to tell you whether we need it or not. The bylaw enforcement, we're funding a portion of that from reserves, and that actually, I think, relates to short-term accommodations and that wouldn't be needed at that time, possibly, to enforce the short-term accommodations. We've added an enhancement, the clerk, the second role for customer service, because the customer service clerk was a 50-50 role, customer service and communications, and now we've added a straight customer service role. The other one was a museum enhancement. I will let you know that all of these are estimates, and our budget numbers currently include these as if we're budgeting fully for them now. So there are a few dollar adjustments up and down. And that was why I think every time we end a meeting, I'd say, I have to go check the numbers. Well, that's where I was checking the numbers. The other items are, we wanted to bring back some items this year or this time, because there's a few that during our discussions, we either parked them or we wanted to review them a little further. So I wanted to review the project, building project coordinator enhancement was parked, and we have brought it back for discussion only because we wanted to close the loop. The facilities position, it's included in the budget numbers. The seasonal summer camps are included along with the revenue is included. The institution of Southern Georgia Bay is included in the numbers. Meaford downtown, now this is another one currently. That $9,000 is included in the numbers as well as a reserve contribution to cover the $9,000. And then there also is a COLA increase of 2% included in our final version 3 numbers. Now, I'm going to stop there and ask if anybody has any questions at this time.
Councillor Yuri?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Val. Appreciate that. Just wondering where, I know, Sarah, thank you for you put in here later about the community engagement coordinator position and some potential changes to that or additions to that. Just don't know where you want that. You want to leave that till that comes up in that position, or because you're talking about staffing, do you want to talk about that?
I can do the summary sheet for staffing breakdown, and then we can discuss those 2 positions that have been brought back.
Sure.
If you'd like.
Councillor Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On this last page that we're looking at, number 14 of the presentation, I'd like to put a motion before council that the $9,000 that we were going to pull from the BIA reserve for Meaford downtown be allocated to the Chamber of Commerce. We heard quite a compelling presentation from the new president of the Chamber of Commerce at our last council meeting. And I was inspired by the number of initiatives that they are bringing forward in their strategic plan for this year and beyond. And I think this $9,000 could really support the chamber as they embark on the many actions that they outlined for us last Monday. So I put that motion on the table.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Yuri? Discussion? Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Mayor Kettner, and thanks Shirley for bringing that forward. I can almost agree to it. Later on in the budget, we're not funding the Red Apple. Is that funding coming out of our money that's going to the Chamber of Commerce? That Big Apple was 18,000. This year it's 0. We're not funding it in any way.
Currently in the budget, there's $30,000 that's going towards the Chamber of Commerce.
And there to fund that.
And that's to fund that, the Apple. I think it was 85 in 23 and an additional 10 in 24. So 18, I think, goes to the Apple funding. And then there's some that goes for, included in that is like the Dragon's Den and a couple of other initiatives that the chamber had been doing before.
So that's included in the 30,000
Yeah.
go to the chamber. We didn't give the chamber 30,000 last year.
I think we gave them 26.5.
Okay. So what I'm saying is we're only upping it $3,500, but we're expecting them to pay 18,000 towards the Apple. Is that correct?
We've always paid about eight that, I think it was 8,000 when I first came back to work.
Mhm.
And then it went up by 8 to 85. And then I think last year we added another 10. So 18.5 goes to the Apple funding currently. And then the rest goes to what other projects they have. And I think one is the Dragon's Den. I think one was the Wave downtown.
I think we can get some
From memory.
clarification. Sorry, did you have some help for Val there?
Good afternoon, and through you to council. Yes, Val is correct. In previous years, it was $8,500. Last year, we moved the $10,000 that was initially for South Georgian Bay Tourism at the request of council. That was moved over to the chamber to operate the Apple. So $18,500 was specifically to run the apple and extend their hours of operation beyond what they were able to do previously. The other amounts were additional requests to council, and I believe through the bursary fund to fund events such as Meaford Dragons and other initiatives.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may, thinking of the apple, and perhaps Councillor Urick will attest to this, and Councillor Forder from their time on the chamber. The chamber used to be very successful in receiving grants to support them with operating the apple, and in the last, I'm not sure how many years, couple of years anyway, the grants have been much harder to acquire. So I think the 18.5 doesn't go as far as we might think it would, considering, you know, the wage that now exists and the desire to keep the apple open through the fall with the scarecrow season and you know, the different events that happen in the fall, the craft show and so on. It really is the main source of, not discounting Meaford Hall at all, but it is the very visible tourism information office, the apple on the main street. So I'd like to see that funded as best we can. Even last year with the funding they had, they couldn't keep it open 7 days a week. So I think we could leave it up to the chamber to distribute the funds in the way they, you know, felt was most appropriate. But I think this 9,000 could really help them again with the initiatives that we heard about last week in rebuilding the chamber. I mean, now we don't have main streets and we don't have a BIA, so the chamber really is the vehicle to support business in our community. So I would like to support them.
Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Mayor Kettner, and I agree, Shirley. I'm not adding it up. If we give the chamber 26.5 and we paid 18 for the apple is 44,000, and now we're giving them 30, we're shortchanging them. We're not shortchanging that project, are we not? That's the way I added up.
The flat amount that we gave the chamber, I believe was 26.5 last year. 30,000 includes everything. So it includes 18. I think it's +5 for Dragon's Den, and I think 3,000 for the wave. I think that adds up to around that 26,000 mark I was thinking.
When the 26, because on last year's budget, the apple was a separate line and it cost the municipality $18,000.
Yeah. And the other ones were funded somewhere else. In like economic development, strategic, or like they were funded last year as well. The 5 and the 3 were paid out last year to the chamber.
Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Deputy Mayor, for bringing this forward. You said in your opening remarks not to take it from a reserve, but take it from the money from the former BIA. That's correct. So as a person who served on that board for quite a few years, the thrust of the BIA was always to do things that bettered the downtown. They were always looking for projects that they could financially support. So I think that using the monies that had been gleaned over a good number of years needs to find a spot to do some work with that money, and I could support you on this.
Are we ready to vote then? All in favor? And that's carried. I had a question, and it's probably a dumb question, but I'm looking at the pie chart on page 7. If you can go back to that, I wondered what the difference between ongoing and carry forward is. The red ongoing 7,134,000 and the carry forward 1,947,000.
I knew I had a definition before. I don't have it on my little piece of paper right now. Ongoing is something that we've started in 2024 and is continuing into 2025. No, yes, and carry forward is something that we did not get accomplished in 2024 and we're carrying it into 2025. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kent. I don't have it in front of me, but further on in this agenda, there's 2 pages telling you exactly what is on both. And I think Toll Bridge is on the carry or on the going forward. There's a bunch of stuff. It does explain it further on. I could find it for you.
You both made me feel a lot better. Thank you. Any other questions before Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not going to help our cause any, but as I look at the line regarding the Trowbridge reconstruction, I think it's since we last discussed this and made our decisions about this project at council, it's been on my mind that I wonder if we made the right decision regarding sidewalks. I know we agreed to just sidewalk on one side from Cook Street on. And I just wanted to put it out for consideration today. If we might at some point revisit that conversation and ask you, Jeff, if I may, and you won't, off the top of your head, perhaps be able to give me an answer, but a rough cost to continue sidewalk along the other side of the street.
Through your worship to Deputy Mayor, I won't be able to give you an estimated cost, but the sidewalks will be going out as a provisional item through the award tender. So it will come back to this group for sure for decision.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thanks, Your Worship. Pertaining to the Deputy Mayor's question and through you to Mr. Freeze. The proposed sidewalks would be on the south side, I believe, of the street. On the north side, there are quite a number of hydro poles that are right next to the sidewalk. I wonder if that might be a factor in the future.
Through your worship. Yes, Councillor Greenfield, Hydro One we're in talks with Hydro One right now currently on getting them up here to do a site inspection to hopefully move or give their comment on the structure of or the condition of the hydro poles there and potentially get them moved over. Hopefully, giving this year, they'll be able to get that done prior to construction starting next year.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. Val, going back to page 20 of our agenda, the budget analysis and the financial analysis. You say we're going the right direction. That you think that's a 1-year job? Is that for IT purposes or what are them positions for? That we were going to finance them through reserves?
So currently, I would say one is for sure. It's a contract that I'm using right now. That probably won't expand over. The other one possibly should be a full-time position that I'm looking for, which would be the lower of the two. But until I have a full staff complement back, I can't answer that question, sorry.
Okay, I had concerns whether we're going the right direction. You say we are, so I'm going to stroke that one off my list.
Okay.
Sorry, Councillor Forder.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, I just wanted to mention with regards to the carry forward capital projects, page 251 is where you'll find the explanation in the summary. I'll look into that too.
Don't see any other questions at this point.
Okay.
Sorry, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Val, I just wanted to ask you for your thoughts on this one, if I may. I know the year is short thus far, January till, if we say the end of March, but we do have, in my mind, quite a considerable amount of salary gapping. And what happens to those funds? Do you prefer those kind of left in a reserve or available for a new CAO to allocate should he or she wish to change the organizational chart? Or just tell us what happens with those funds.
So currently, if there's salary gapping, we could, at the end of the year, find out how much that is. And we would probably replenish the HR reserve because we've used it quite a bit in the last couple of years. That offsets other costs that we've had over the last 2 years. That's offsetting our HR grid review as well. So yes, there will be salary gapping, and at a time, it could be if and when a new CAO is hired, we could review that, and then he maybe at that time, there may be some jobs that would change or be modified. That's something that would be like a structural review, and maybe some of the positions that are existing right now may change to something else. But that would have to be however that new CAO decides to go forward with that. I think built into your budget currently with the wages you have, you should have that ability. That's my thought.
Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. Just to comment on that, I think some of the salary gapping was used last year, throughout the year. Normally, we leave it to the end of the year and that goes in the surplus. It was brought forward at a previous meeting. The town of Blue Mountains is budgeting to take 2% off their tax increase for salary gap, and that may happen in 2025. And we as a council said, that's a little dangerous. We don't want to do that. So I'm glad to leave it where it is for now.
Any other questions before we move on? I think it's back to you, Val.
So our next slide, we spent a lot of time reviewing 2024 and now 2025. And we've come to, we went back, I believe last year, the thought process was there's like so many FTEs. We opted to just choose and work with full-time employees. So the numbers that you see here are just full-time positions that we have in place currently. So at the end of 2024, there were 97 full-time budgeted in 2024. There were 97 full-time employees. That included 2 new positions during the budget deliberations. So currently, we start with 97 at the beginning of the year. Throughout 2025 or 2024, we added 7 new positions. Some of those are during our budget deliberations and some of those are throughout the year. So right now, full-time staff, not FTEs, not like the seasonal people that we have, not any, like that doesn't include council. I don't believe, no, it doesn't include council. It just includes full-time people. So currently in our budget right now, we are saying there's 104 full-time positions being budgeted. Do you have any questions on this?
Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Mayor Kettner. So actually 3 of them for 2024 were transportation, going from part-time snowplow drivers to full-time, correct? To help out with the part,
Yeah.
and that was through budget. I remember that.
So in 2020, I think in 2023, if I'm not mistaken, we started with the PFS, TFS, I'll call it. And we struggled with hiring them because you'd hire them in the summertime and they'd be great for parks. And then by the time the winter came, they weren't necessarily so great. So this year we opted to put, and transportation took it upon themselves to remove a portion of their budget, which was, Jeff's going to correct me, 135 came from rural storm or something to cover off a portion of that. And then the other thing with parks, we needed full-time people throughout the winter as well. And it's a safety issue as well. So yes, we've added 3 full-time positions in parks. To help, to help with the safety issue and this way, we can do more ditching and whatever else transportation needs to do throughout the summer.
Another question?
Thank you. So it makes a 7 a lot smaller because I understand them and I agree with what has been done. I'm going to be the devil's advocate here, and I'm sorry if I step on any toes. 10 years ago, we had 73 staff. Every year we add and add and add and add. We got everything done back in 70 or 10 years ago, 8 years ago, we got everything done. It soon has to come to an end. We're now paying more to staff than almost all the other municipalities in the county. I appreciate what staff does, but it soon has to come to an end on hiring. Not saying that I want to get rid of any of them now. I think we're got a good complement in this 104, and I hope it doesn't keep on escalating over the years. One last comment, and I do realize council keeps on adding services to the municipality, which keeps on adding staff. So the blame that I'm saying is around the horseshoe. So I understand it, but I hope it soon comes to an end.
Any other comments or questions?
Deputy Mayor?
Mr. Mayor, I have to speak to that, Councillor Bartley. I know numbers of staff are increasing, but on the other side of that, our community is growing. And we're seeing, yes, additional services, but I don't think we can compare ourselves, as you well know, to other municipalities who don't have a wonderful Meaford Hall, or perhaps don't offer the services in our library that we do, or perhaps don't have the standards that we do in terms of our maintenance, our winter maintenance in particular. So as much as those numbers increase, I think we also see our tax base increasing. We saw, as Val just spoke to a few minutes ago, our growth of over $300,000, and that means more people to look after, which means we need more staff to do that. So I know it's difficult to look at those numbers, this 70 up to 104, and understand how that happened. But I think particularly in the IT department, there's a lot more going on than there was 10 years ago. We have to be so much more concerned about security now after all that we've been through and we've seen happen in other municipalities. So I think it's just the nature of this particular point in time where we're at with more demands from the province. And it just, again, as we grow in population, it takes more people to look after this community. So I think we do a good job around this table of keeping a handle on that as best we can. And I very much appreciate our staff and all that they do. And I think they're conscious, as we are, of growing that number as efficiently as possible.
And if I can just add, while we have 104 positions at this time, we don't have 104 people. I'd be very curious to know at this exact moment in time how many people we have, but there is quite a gap. And so just to say that everybody that is working right now is maybe wearing 2 or 3 hats, and that's problematic.
Yes, they are.
Thank you. Councillor Urick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I appreciate the comment, Steve, I really do. Although I'm going to agree with Deputy Mayor. It's funny because on one hand, we say we shouldn't be comparing ourselves with other municipalities when it comes to wages, for example. We say that all the time. And yet we do it when we automatically compare to staffing levels all of a sudden. And I think what it's going to have to come back to is if we really want to look at that and we want a validation, when we do get the new CAO, then we do need apples to oranges comparisons with other municipalities, to the point Meaford Hall being a really good example of something that we have that the other municipalities don't. How many people does that take? So if a CAO can now analyze that and come back and say, yeah, this is the reason why we have this number of employees as compared to Southgate or South West Gray or any of those, then there's a substantiation. But just saying it just on the broad number, I think might just be a little unfair.
Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So this has always been the rock and hard spot here in our municipality. The fellow that talked to me is just sitting off to my left. He told me, if I can just talk a little, Jeff, told me that as we're growing in his fleet, he's basically operating his fleet numbers like he did a few years ago. And yet we're growing. And there's going to be other places where he's going to have his crew go to service. And we're not really matching that. So with growth comes financial requests. And just like the lady that came to council early on today, I remember when I ran back in 2014, it was the number and size and depth of the potholes that seemed to be the one that we were talking about. It's an ongoing request. So many places with so many things to do. And so our responsibility, I think, as we're moving through this, I think we're making some good headway here, but that doesn't mean that in the future, things aren't going to be of the same demand level or even more, because we can see that happening. So we want growth, we want people. Deputy Mayor said that our tax base is increasing. I told people a little while ago, I thought we were looking at $19 million tax supported. And the number today was 21, a little bit more. 19? Am I back to my 19? Okay, so anyway, it is a balancing act, and I think we're doing very well.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good discussion, and I think it's a discussion that is needed. Councillor Bartley talks about, I think 73 employees a number of years ago. I can talk about 43 employees a number of years ago. However, there's no doubt about it. At that time, after amalgamation, there was some confusion as far as the governance of our municipality. I'd like to think some of that has been settled over the years. We do have different service delivery areas. I don't think the deputy mayor mentioned the harbor. Many of our Clay County municipalities do not have the benefit of a harbor. Now, saying that as a benefit, it does come at a cost, but I'm glad we have the harbor. I think it's a huge asset. I have witnessed the increase in staff, and the numbers have bothered me. Not just the number of people, but the dollar figures have bothered me. But I look at our current staff, and there's a place for these people. We need these people. They're doing a job, and to administer a modern day municipality, we have to reach out. We have to expand, and we do have to involve more financial resources. So it would be very easy for me to say, yeah, we're at our limit, and there's a recommendation coming forward, slated to come forward a bit later, and I have been wrestling with that now for the last 2 or 3 weeks, and that's all I'll say about it right now. But times are changing, our population has increased, the deputy mayor is right, and the members of our population, I have seen a change over the last, 20 years. And, there are different needs and, our residents, some of them anyway, are looking to the municipality to provide those needs. Maybe some of the needs are brand new. Maybe some of them just need to be, increased, improved. Okay, that's fine. Thanks, Your Worship.
I think we're ready to keep moving.
Okay, so the next slide, I wanted to bring, like I had provided you with a slide that said how much our wages increased over last year. So this one, I'm just identifying where the increases are. So factors that are included in our $1.1 million are a cost of living increase of 2%, increase to the cost of benefits and pension and benefits. Our annual salary grid increases, so you move up on the grid throughout your time. There were additional positions, and normally in the year of a budget, so any new position that would have been budgeted last year would only been budgeted for, say, usually starts in May. So any new positions that we create this year, for example, would only be starting with a budget number starting in May. So that kind of brings back to your salary gapping. There wouldn't be salary gapping for them because we aren't hiring them yet. So those are not built into this budget. So I think there's a couple that have May start dates that are budgeted for, but next year, that'll be a whole year. So there's like probably $25,000 additional that would have to be added to that salary next year, possibly even more, depending on the level. Do you have any questions on this slide? No. Okay. So then we move into our council enhancement. So there's a couple of slides now that we've brought back for you to have an open discussion on again, just so that we close the loop on if these are things you want or do not want in the current budget. And I'm going to let you guys discuss that.
Councillor Yorick, this is your motion, so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Val, for that. I appreciate it. So, and I apologize that I wasn't here. I was here in the morning for that last budget meeting and unfortunately couldn't be here in the afternoon, so I couldn't really kind of defend it. And thank you, Deputy Mayor, for trying to kind of do that. So bear with me a little bit here. This is going to be a little bit lengthy, but I'm going to try and make a validation for this. So I watched the video of the conversation that took place around that, and I have a couple of questions, which at the end of this. Tony, you had said that when you looked at it, you said this should be given to the Economic Development Department. And I would argue what Economic Development Department, that's what this is trying to build. We don't specifically have, if you were to look at our Economic Development Department, there isn't one. So right now it exists of the small and medium business liaison. And this position was a contract position for the community engagement coordinator. So that is what I'm hoping is going to be the foundation of an actual economic development department for the CAO to hopefully work with. And Harley, you kind of sort of said the same thing, because you said we had two people already. You couldn't validate hiring a third. And yet the two people, this is one of the two people, and that's a contract position that's going to be gone. So where that takes us was we have a number of things that we want to do. So in years past, again, we had long conversations with the CAO, past acting CAO, about the possibility of having act devs. Those two particular, and this is not the last, this is the previous two CAOs, said it was baked into the rest of the departments. We didn't really need that as a standalone. Well, I'm going to then turn to Sarah and Val, we've heard the term working off the side of our desks to death over the last few weeks of months of budget conversation. So if we're going to give direction to people to do these things, who is actually going to do it? So when you say give it to the Economic Development Department, there isn't one that's going to fall on the shoulders of who already has their own job. So for example, the growing our economy, what they were trying to do with this, and maybe it got a little confusing because this particular description maybe went a little too heavily on the aspect of just events and relating to that, because I believe this goes on so much more than that. And I thank you, Sarah, again, for what you just did. And you talked about additional duties that could kind of go into that role. But let me just read a couple of things. So in the employee contract, we are now offering the CAO. Point 3, and I don't know how many people read the contract extensively, but point 3, literally what we're asking them to do is a community and stakeholder engagement, develop, launch a community engagement plan to build trust and transparency with residents, businesses, and local organizations, conduct meetings with key internal and external stakeholders, such as local businesses, indigenous communities, provincial agencies, and neighboring municipalities, and evaluate public service delivery and explore opportunities to enhance customer service and digital accessibilities, and initiate a town hall or public forum to introduce yourself, share priorities, and gather community input. That's one. Point 4 then went on to say economic development and financial management. Conduct a review of economic development strategies and identify opportunities for business growth, investment, attraction, and job creation. Assess municipal grants, funding programs, and partnerships to optimize financial sustainability. So my point is if the CAO is being tasked with pursuing community engagement and economic development, and we're not giving them an economic development department, how do they do that? They shuffle it off to the sides of the desks of the other people that are already working. So how are they going to manage that extra workload? So then I talked to Savannah at Myers at Grey County, because she is obviously the ECDev lead over there. And she said, quote, and she told me I could read this: the value of economic development at the local level cannot be underestimated, as it's crucial to have someone on the ground with eyes and ears to get to know your business community, landowners, community organizations, etc. Having the resources to be working daily on achieving your vision, issue prevention, and answer to questions to support retention and attraction, it really is a full-time job. In the last few weeks, months, again, so the Growing Our Economy put forth a few suggestions, which council actually said, yeah, we should pursue these. A community visioning plan, an ECDev strat plan needs to be updated, business retention and expansion plan. We've got TCE happening. Bruce Power is expanding. Why I bring those up is because, again, through the conversations with Savannah, Grey County says right now, and again, I quote, we're not even on Grey County's radar. So when they're looking around the county for these TCE, Bruce Power, or other businesses coming here, and they talk to the county and they say, we're interested in a municipality. What can we do? Where can we go? What should we look? We're not even on the radar because we haven't been working on a lot of the things that we need to do from an economic development perspective. So 4 years ago, I sat on the ECDev committee, and the county made a presentation at that point talking about exactly those things, about how we need up our game and getting shovel-ready land ready, about pursuing ECDev initiatives. 4 years later, we're exactly where the same place we were then. And that's an issue, because in 4 years, if we don't kind of put people in place who can do this and assist the CAO, we're going to be in exactly the same spot. So at the end of the day, I think I've also kind of done this backwards myself, because we've said over and over again, we need to get the CAO in place, and they can kind of address and fill out what they need to do from an ECDev perspective. And I'm now saying that's wrong. We need to determine the priority of ECDev. And if we are serious about it, we need to set up the people that the CAO then can work with to do what they need to do to further ECDev in tandem with Grey County. So that's my kind of pitch for why I truly believe we need this community engagement coordinator. It's already worked successfully for the past few months. We've heard much more positive input from the local groups. It was also posited at the last video when I watched it. A lot of people said, yeah, well, that's kind of the local groups. That's what they're doing. yeah, it's great that that's what they're doing, but they still need to work with the municipality to do that. And in which case they need a go-to person and a liaison within that can be a direct conduit, as opposed to them coming and saying, well, now I'm going to ask Sarah, or I'm going to ask Val, or I'm going to ask planning, or I'm going to ask whatever, because it's shotgun. We need that person who can be on the front of ECDev, who can say, yes, I'm here. What can we do with the community to help further everything as a whole? That's my pitch.
Deputy Mayor, as the seconder, did you want to speak to this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Urick has done such a great job that there's not too much to add, just a couple of things. At the wrap up for our sesquicentennial committee, that was the key comment that came from the group, and I often thought as co-chair of that group that we literally had every organization in the municipality present at that table. And the comment was that it would have been so much simpler if everybody just had one person to go to. So I think that was a clear message that one support person for our event people would be appreciated, and that would be this position. And the other just quick point I wanted to make, and I'm sorry I can't expand on this at this point in time, but I am privileged to be aware that there are two major events upcoming this year that both of them would really be relying on this position and would certainly be at a wee bit of a loss if this particular individual was not continuing in her position with the municipality. So I did second this council enhancement motion at our last meeting, and I certainly stand behind that decision, and will continue to support this, because I think, again, as we grow, this position will just be more and more needed in our communities. So I hope council will consider this positively.
Um,
I just wanted to point out as well, Val, I wanted to say, so you've got 95,000 in here as on the bottom of that. In the figure, in the sheet that Sarah provided, it said there were 80,000 this year, and I'm just wondering if you can clarify.
Might be a typo.
Well, you had it at three different prices, 80 this year.
Okay. So I think, without going back into the numbers, the 95, I believe, is a full year, and that includes benefits.
Right.
The 77 could be the starting date of like May, right?
Right.
So that's probably the difference.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. And Rob, I missed what you said at the beginning. Would you mind just starting all over again? But I do appreciate everything that you said, and Shirley, your comments as well. And I wholeheartedly agree. I see that there's a need for this, and certainly since this individual has taken this position, the positive feedback that I have been receiving anecdotally has been overwhelmingly positive. And so I recognize that this is something that the municipality could greatly benefit from. So you have my full support with this enhancement.
Councillor Greenfield.
Skinny Worship, if I may, I have a question through you to Valerie. Back earlier on in our budget debate, there was a proposal to hire someone for grant searching. Did we approve that, or I thought that was rejected? I'm just thinking if I didn't think we approved that, but I'm thinking maybe that could be a part of this parcel too.
So if you thought about the community engagement person, maybe that person could be responsible for volunteers as well. Or you can build that, like, I know the job description that we've attached is the one that we had in the fall. That doesn't mean that we have to keep that existing job description. We could modify it. But yes, grants, or I guess you would just want to see what it is that that person would do. like there is a lot of planning involved with events. The bigger events are probably more planning than the smaller events. It's really what you want out of this position. And it's really what you want out of economic development too. Like that's, I think, what you have to define is what it is that you're looking for. If that makes sense.
Councillor Yuri, oh, sorry, a supplementary first.
Sure.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thanks, Your Worship. Yes, and I just wanted to say too, in my opinion, it does mention volunteer recruitment and management in the report here, and to me, that's it's fairly small and down near the bottom. To me, that's a much more important role that we do need in the future.
Councillor Yuri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, I agree 100%, Val. It's what position needs to be. And once again, I'm hoping, like, I'm not asking for $175,000 director. I'm not asking for $125,000 manager. I'm looking for foot soldiers, people that are basically going to be on the ground and do the work. And I think that is much more valuable. And I think at the end of the day, yes, when the new CAO is in place and they will be working hopefully with the county, and that they can be then identifying where our gaps are, where we need to kind of tighten up and move forward. And then that these people can hopefully do the work that the county and CAO agree that we are short on in terms of economic development, move those forward. So it's I think for the monies being paid comparingly to setting up a whole ECDev department where we have directorial or management, let's utilize the CAO for that. And I think we could do this at a bargain price and at least set the foundation for an ECDev department.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kettner. I was shot down the last time I spoke and I was going to sit here and pout and not say another word, but that's not me. So I just need to know, we're about to lose another staff with the deputy clerk or the acting clerk leaving, everybody's moving up. Is there another person being hired, or can this person fit in there and cover some bases?
So currently, built into our budget in that 104 number that I referred to, we have a budgeted acting clerk or a clerk position, and we have a budgeted deputy clerk position. So those positions are already there, and we're not removing that position per se. It's just being taken over by somebody else. So it still stays the same. We're not losing any dollars. If you're looking for savings that way, we're not.
No, I'm not. You're missing a person. A person is leaving.
Yes.
Are
and
we hiring another, because the other people are moving up?
Okay.
Is there another spot being filled?
Yes. So currently, with this reorg of the clerk's department, we are going to advertise and hire the community coordinator for that. It's always been in the budget. It's always approved. So it was a well-being legislative coordinator. I think last year the job was called community council and committee coordinator. So that position is already budgeted. It was budgeted last year. It was not replaced last year because this was an acting role. So regardless of what we do, we have to add more people to legislative services. We have it built into the budget though, so we're not adding another staff member. It's already budgeted. Is that what your question is? Sorry.
You are hiring another person to
We will.
replace the one leaving. So this enhancement wouldn't fit in there and cover that bill. Enhancement is an enhancement.
An enhancement, yes.
So I'm going to speak on this unless Councillor Bell, did you want to speak to it next, or you go ahead and I'll just wrap up.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Oh, how many people do we have now doing this ECDev work? 1, 2, or did we have 3?
Okay. So I'm gonna go from a budget standpoint first. So in the budget in 2024, we had budgeted for an economic development coordinator. We then throughout 2024, we added an economic development director. We added small business liaison, and we were potentially going to add a growth person at the time too, but that never happened. And then at the end of 2024, the economic development director was vacant. So because it wasn't an approved position, it was removed from the budget. So currently, as it sits right now, we have a small business liaison who basically took the position of the economic development coordinator. So you would be adding a person to economic development. Yes.
Two people. We've got two right now. Yeah.
Right now.
Well,
This would be too much.
yeah, we have two at this point in time. One under contract.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
This would just
Yeah.
continue.
Well, I just add, I've been kicking around for 4 years now, 4 years on council and 2 years behind me in this chair. And one of the things that sustains Meaford and makes it better than anywhere else is its events and the volunteers who bring those events to the table. And in almost every case that I can think of, when the what hit the fan, you would have somebody from the organizations appealing to staff, for help. And everybody on staff was overloaded already, and so there was a great tendency to say, well, sorry, but we just can't help you. This year, we had 75 events just associated with the sesquicentennial, and that 150th event, went off just without a hitch compared to what it's like trying to put events together prior to that. And I give all the credit, or a lot of all of the credit really, to the volunteers and the two co-chairs, but this role played an exceedingly important part in keeping that going. And already this role is deeply involved in the Keys to the City celebration, which is coming up on July the 18th. And the following day, the 4th Canadian Division Training Center is going to be open to the general public for a family day. It's a big event, and already a lot of work has gone into it, put into it by this individual without any oversight, without anybody really directing her, or without, a lot of involvement from, but Shirley and I are aware because we have a close relationship to the commanding officer of the range, and they're delighted with what is happening and really looking forward to it. And I really believe this summer is going to be just about as fantastic as last summer was as a result of this particular weekend, July 18 and 19. I'll certainly be supporting this, and we will need more people in economic development going forward, but they'll pay their salary back in, 3, 4, or 5-fold because of the importance of economic development to a community like Meaford. You're only doing two things. You're moving forward or you're sliding back. And it's very hard for a municipality like ours to move forward, but economic development is going to be the key. Are you ready for the vote? All in favor? And that is carried. And thank you kindly, everyone.
Mr. Mayor, sorry, I didn't catch you there. So I think we had council discussing the slide. I didn't hear a new motion to include the community engagement coordinator as a budget enhancement.
Sorry, then.
So I think we should move in second a motion and then vote on that, if that's okay. Sorry to
Well, it's
interrupt
the only way to
late.
go, and I am sorry. Councillor Urick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for pointing that out. That's very true. So based on that slide, council enhancement, and with the document that Sarah provided about extra duties, I would move that we do proceed with hiring the community engagement coordinator position full-time so that they can work with the CAO and our HR director and council to determine further duties moving forward.
Okay. Further discussion? We've had quite a bit, but any last words? All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Back to you.
Okay. So the next one that we had parked during our, I think it was the February 14th date, was this building project coordinator and planning technician. This is the, this would be basically a summary of this is that we're moving the development services coordinator, which is a 50-50 role between building and planning, and creating two roles, one that would be solely under building, and then one that would be solely under planning. Now, I do know that I believe both Bart and Denise are here to speak to it if you have any questions.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think my one question, Denise, I'm sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot here because I believe I heard you say last meeting or the one before that, that planning was fully staffed now. So if that's the case, and then we're requesting this, I guess I'll call it a half position. Just, can you just expand on being fully staffed and why we need this position in your mind?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. So, yes, so we have the two planners and myself, which is all of our division plus the development services assistant. So those roles are all filled now, which is great. What we've noticed though over the time, last say 3 years that I've been here, is the amount of work that has been shifted to our division that had been supposed to be with other divisions. So for example, coordinating development review and the engineers, paying those bills for those engineers. So in this case, we use Ainley exclusively. Coordinate comments and things like that was actually supposed to be, when I started, given to another staff member in another division. And that ended up being too onerous for that person to complete. And so it was passed back to planning at some point. I want to say a year ago, might have been a bit longer, with no real plan for how we were going to take on those additional tasks. So I would say that those are fairly administrative, but they've ended up falling on my desk, which I don't think is the best use of my time, making sure that the bills are paid for those folks, reviewing them, and also stick handling comments. So for example, if we have engineering comments matrix that comes in, making sure that those are saved and circulated out to staff to review, setting up meetings with everybody so they can all chat about those comments and things like that. That's probably not the best use of my time. Certainly I can pass that to one of the planners. But right now, the development services assistant doesn't really have the ability to take on additional work. And it's sort of a little bit more specific to planning than what they do now. So that role is currently doing committee of adjustment and not a lot more beyond that for planning because they just don't have time. They've been taking courses to get better at some of the planning stuff and learn more along like a planning technician would do, but just don't have enough time to devote to that. And the two things are pretty different. So, but what building needs for their stuff and what planning needs are a little bit different. So that's kind of where some of those additional things come from. The other part is some of the things that we're planning to launch, like cloud permit for planning, some of the customer service related things that we were hoping that this person would be able to do. So for example, inquiries come in, that they could maybe handle a number of those inquiries rather than having them just automatic, like, because right now, if you're not an expert, you pretty much just hand it over to someone else to do. So that, yes, they're customer service, but they're just triaging it to somewhere else, if that makes sense.
Any further questions for her? Oh, Steve?
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. So this isn't a half position, it's a full position. Where does the 37,000 come from?
Okay, so so currently what happens in the budget currently is that the full position, so the development services coordinator currently is sitting fully budgeted in 690, but there's a chargeback to building. So the building portion, of course, because the building is a revenue neutral department, so that half would be paid for by building fees.
Any other questions? Sorry.
Mr. Mayor, do you mind if we just read the recommendation there
Sure.
and have it move a second and then we can vote?
Okay. So the recommendation is that Committee of the Whole direct staff to include the Building Project Coordinator Planning Technician as a budget enhancement in the 2025 final operating budget. Moved by Councillor Bell, seconded by Councillor Forder. Anybody else want to discuss it more? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Denise, if I may, come back to something that you said, and I think you're aware that around this council table, that one comment we often hear from the public and from our development community is that responses don't come as quickly as they would like them to. So did I hear you correctly in suggesting that if this position were added, that you'd have an additional voice that could respond to those calls and emails?
Through you, your worship, to the question that Deputy Mayor has. So, yes, absolutely. I mean, right now, I'm not aware of us not answering any calls. So I'm always really excited if someone tells me who needs a call, because I'm happy to do it. I think some of our staff actually did hear that, and we're really wondering if the comment was meaning that person. So they were questioning it, like, is this me? Who's not calling people? So if someone feels that they aren't getting a call back, they can reach out to me directly to try to address it, or Mr. Toby, if it's related to building. We want to make sure everyone's getting calls back. But this would be a frontline person still. So they would be the first point of contact. So if someone feels that they're not getting an answer from the specific planner on their file, they should reach out to me if it's not my file, to let me know that they're not getting answers back right away and that they've lost communication for some reason. But if it's a frontline person, the first person to make a contact if someone calls, that would be what this role would do. So if someone's calling in saying, I'm looking at a property, I just want some information about it, they would be one of the people that would then be able to answer those questions. Right now, those go in through the planning email, the generic email now, and they're just done in queue. So as they come in. So somebody who's available just answers them as soon as they come in. But that person, if this role is created, would also be part of that pool of those who answer questions, and depending on the complexity of it. So if it's a simple one with the zoning information on the property, is it serviced? Does it have water and sewer? That kind of stuff. We get those sorts of questions because people are looking to buy and they don't want to call environmental services to ask that question. So they usually ask us. They'd be able to answer that type of question.
Are there any other questions? Sorry, did you have one for us?
Yes, Your Worship. So at the last meeting, I did listen to the recording afterwards, and there were some questions. I just wanted to know if anyone had any questions about the centralized planning model and how it would affect this particular type of position. I know that came up, and I don't think there was the ability to answer it. So if there's an interest in me answering that now, I'm happy to do that. I'm seeing nodding. So I think, if Your Worship, if I could be indulged on that. So I think this role would be even more important should we go to a centralized planning model, because they would remain here and then become more of the face of the initial contact. As you know, the decisions would still be made municipally. So if it's a zoning amendment or a committee of adjustment matter, someone wants to sever or do minor variance or something like that, site plans, all of that will still remain. So somebody will have to do the coordination for those types of applications still. This person would do that. that. They would also coordinate comments that are received and make sure that the planners at the county would have access to those, because most of those come in either through the clerks or through a planning generic email that would actually be within the municipality, not just forwarding on to the county. They wouldn't just go directly to the county because those are municipal comments that they have to gather. So my thought is that that person would be just as important, if that happens, to be the frontline person at the municipality, and also to coordinate things like the bills that we pay through the developer accounts, because as you know, when we have engineering or legal costs, those have to be captured and then billed back to the developer. So tracking all that is actually a lot of work, and we were hoping that we can get a lot better at it to make sure it's done in a more timely manner with a little bit more staff for that.
Any other questions? I see none, so I think I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Great, that's helpful. So Valerie, I'm going to go back to you then.
Maybe what we'll do is summarize where we're at right now, adding those two positions back in. And I think. I think we're at 8.9, that's before growth included. And 6.86 as a tax rate increase. And a blended of 5.16 now. So if there is there any other questions on anything else that anybody would like to bring up at this time?
Deputy Mayor Keaveney?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would wonder if we could talk about the harbor. There's been a carry forward project for a couple of years now to do the patio around the harbor house with $30,000, which is now in reserves. So I'm looking at page 279 of the budget book. And Val, what I'm wondering is if you can tell us how much is in the harbor reserve, I'm sorry, how much it might cost to dredge the harbor, and what do we have already allocated to dredging? Because I would like to move this $30,000 over to add to whatever you have for dredging if it's not enough to do a proper job of digging out our harbor.
I'm not sure if Rick's gonna be able to answer the dredging question at all. But let me look in the budget to see how much we have budgeted currently. I think it's 20, if I'm not mistaken. And I think I'm thinking in November, we had a number of about 100,000 in one of those enhancement pieces way back when. Yeah. She mentioned 60,000. Okay. Okay. Do you have any comments on that? I'm gonna look at a couple numbers.
Through your worship, Deputy Mayor Keaveney. The numbers, as Councillor Bartley had mentioned, I was led to believe that there was 60,000 already budgeted, and then there was approximately another 40,000 to come out of other harbor projects that we could pool together to come up to 100,000. But as the treasurer Valerie has mentioned, I can't really give you like a firm number.
I may follow up, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm just curious to know what the cost for dredging will be. And is that a decision we have to make today, because it won't change the actual numbers in the budget if we find out that it's going to cost more than $100,000 to properly dredge the harbor? Is that a discussion we could have at a later date, Val, or does it need to be tied down before the budget is completed?
Okay. So in 2024, we budgeted $40,000 for dredging. We didn't do any. So we could put that to reserves for a year-end adjustment. Currently, we have $20,000 budgeted in this year's budget. In the reserve currently at the end of 2023, there was 137, but I'm not sure without going back and finding it if we funded anything from reserves last year. I do know, I believe there is a portion that's being transferred to reserves for a balancing amount, then Jared might be able to tell me. So we have 60 if we use this year's 20 already and 40 last year. So we would have 60 plus any possible money in our harbor reserve of 137. Realizing I'm not sure where we are with docks and if we've got everything. If we have any docks that have to replace this year, do we have?
Currently, we have docks that are going to be looked at for works this year, electrical and water upgrades that are outstanding. So we haven't seen an actual estimation from any of our contractors.
Councillor Urick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Rick. I guess the question is equivalency. We're hearing dollar figures, but I don't know what that equates to and how much dredging we're going to do. And we're hearing from both Boaters and Richardson's that there is big concern. I mean, we haven't done it in a number of years and it's going to require a fair amount. So to the deputy mayor's point, if we're throwing another $30,000 on it, did we get another $30,000 worth of dredging? How much more actually can we do? So what does that $100,000 buy us in dredging, and can we throw more at it? Can we get more done? Obviously, is the question.
Through your worship, to Councillor Urick. So in previous years, the last year that the harbor was dredged was 2013. They gave us an estimated 4 days of dredging, and then the money ran out. So going forward, looking at our economic climate, I can't answer you with a guaranteed figure. But we're hoping to extend that, obviously, more than just 4 days.
Councillor Greenfield.
Your worship, gee, I was hoping the high water levels of the last 3 or 4 days would have taken everything out of the harbor out to the bay, but that may be too optimistic. I've never been in favor of this harbor patio project. It's $30,000 there. It's in reserves. I realize that, but I think the money would be much better spent putting it into as much possible work at the harbor, dredging it as we possibly can. Would be my suggestion.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So on the request from the deputy mayor, are you making sure that we have enough money somewhere that if there's an over request to do the job properly, that we have some money available? So that would be into our reserves. Is that the thinking that we're looking at for extra money?
Yes, as Councillor Urick has suggested, I think it's critically important that the harbor receive a thorough dredging this year. And we don't at this point have an estimate on what that cost is going to be. So it was my motion that we take that $30,000 that's currently in reserves for the patio at Harbor House and move it over to dredging. I know it's all in a harbor reserve, but just to make sure that we've got enough money allocated. because we recognize, as the mayor has said, that there are boats that won't be able to get in to the harbor this year. It's, you know, and that puts Richardson boats at risk when people can't get to them to get their fuel and repairs and so on. So we need to do this work this year.
Yeah, it's absolutely critical. It is.
So
And I don't know how many other members of council get the information from Grace Solville, but I know Councillor Yurick and myself from the flood control people talked about the Big Head River, and there's a monitoring station at the Gray Road 12. And they said that the average height is something like 70 centimeters, and it went to well over 100 in the last couple of days. So more water, more volume, more energy, more stuff in the harbor. So I don't support this.
Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. And I agree. So with the dredging, would this project include removing the dredging materials out of the water, or is it going to be relocated to a deeper part of the harbor? My understanding was the last time it was dredged, the material was just relocated to a deeper part of the harbor, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, removing the dredged material is going to be more costly. So I just want to know how that factors into to the project itself, if we know.
Through you, your worship, Councillor Forder, the materials will be removed. They will not be dumped back in because that lengthens the process for permits. So if we actually remove it physically from the inner harbor, then it lessens the length of time for approvals.
Is there a window of opportunity to get this work done?
Your worship, there is, basically we have to wait until spawning season is completed. And then we have approximately a 2.5 month window of opportunity before fish decide to come back up the river. So
Have we actually got tenders organized, you know, to take advantage of that window of opportunity?
Currently, permits have been applied for, still awaiting. There's approximately 5 different government agencies that I'm dealing with. So I'm hoping to hear, obviously fairly soon, to get this, to be able to keep the ball rolling.
Great, thank you very much. Do we have a seconder for, okay, I need a seconder for Deputy Mayor's motion, and it's coming from Councillor Greenfield. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as mentioned, was done back in 2013. That was before I was on council. There are some very interesting artifacts sometimes that come up from the bottom of the harbor. And I was called, and you see how I can put this. I'm in possession of a British brown bass bayonet that somehow made its way into the harbor. And they called me because of my legionism. And it's pretty cool what can be found in the harbor. So when they're doing this, if there's anything spiky and steel that comes up off the bottom, I don't know, I would at least a call. Maybe our museum can use another couple of pieces, but there's things in there for sure.
Interesting. Are we ready to vote on Deputy Mayor's motion? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. So Valerie, it's back to you again.
Okay, so just
Oh,
follow.
sorry.
I'm not sure this, Mr. Mayor, I did have another question.
Oh, that's, go right ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry about, I'm now on page 296 of 301. And I'm just curious, second line down, development charge contributions. And I'm looking at year 2 budget, year 3, year 4, and so on, but 43 million year 2, 45 million year 3. I mean, do we have that kind of money in development charges?
Is that for the water treatment plant?
Where's that coming from? Yeah.
Currently, no. We don't. But I think that's how, because it's saying that we're budgeting. I think 23% is, I think, existing, and then I think 77%, if I'm not mistaken, is, benefiting. So that would have to be, and that's where the borrowing comes into play. So we would be borrowing and then funding it from development charges over time, is how that works. I just want to come back to the harbor for a minute. So we've currently budgeted $20,000. So I'm going to increase that number to $50,000 currently. And I'm going to remove the patio and take $30,000 from reserve. So the net effect of that isn't an increase at this time. Then what I'll do is during, there may be more money if I take the $40,000 from last year, because we did not spend it. So we could possibly spend a little more than 40, but to keep going with the budget, I'm just going to do the 50 and the 30 for now. Is that okay? 50,000 in the expense, because we already had budgeted 20 already, and then 30 from reserves. Okay. 50 total. Okay. Just so that you guys are aware what I'm doing.
So, and if you need the 40 from last year, we can use that.
Yes. So did I answer your question about development charges?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything, any other questions or any other comments that you want to bring forward?
Councillor Bartley?
Do you mean for the rest of the budget? Oh, okay. I've got nothing big, just some
Okay.
small trivial stuff that's,
Yeah.
I just want to know about.
Okay.
The first one would be to Sarah. So on page 40 of our agenda, which, you've got for training for HR. For the year of 2024, you spent 3,600. It's jumping to 15,000 every year. You feel that's necessary? It couldn't go to 10?
Thank you, and through your worship, to Mr. Bartley. Can you just ask that again? Can you re-question? So,
So it's education and training.
yeah,
60-25 is the thing. So for 2024, we spent $3,632. We're jumping to 15,300. You know, that's a big jump. Is it necessary for education and training in the HR department of $15,000 a year?
thank you. Yes, and I would say I wouldn't move from that number, and that's because it's for the whole of the organization, any training that we may have to work on to put together for the whole of the organization. Anything less than that, it's the same comment that I will apply to this question that I applied to the health and safety piece, is that, like you were saying, you know, it seems like a small amount, but when you take those little amounts away from education and training, that takes away the ability for us to be ensuring that our staff are trained and qualified in the areas that they need to be, that we're able to provide our staff with the necessary skill set to be able to do their jobs efficiently.
Okay, I read this wrong. So it's for all staff, not just for the few people in the health and safety department.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I take that back. Thank you.
Did you have some more points you were wanting to cover off?
Yes, and they are very trivial. It just was getting clarification on page 59 of our agenda under council. It's council donations of $32,000. It wasn't there before. It's not there after. Can you explain that one, Val?
30,000 is Chamber of Commerce, and it could be reallocated to the line that says Chamber of Commerce. And 2,750 is that, yes, Great Lakes, St. Lawrence. Yeah,
Okay, and we won't need that next year.
we will. I probably missed it.
Okay. In the corporate management under council 50K, what? Can you explain that one?
The chargeback.
Chargeback corporate management.
Yeah, so that would be staff time on your behalf. So it's not actually adding anything to the budget because it's being budgeted to corporate management, but it's just staff time that's being,
I'm just wondering what council wasn't charged for before, now it is.
yeah,
Explanation.
that. I think it's just a percentage of a person's time.
I don't see any staff spending any time on council.
No, we don't.
Just joking.
We- Okay. My face? Sorry, was I looking back?
No, before somebody took me serious on that one. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
And again, there's 10,000 on Meaford Hall. What does Meaford Hall have to do with council?
Oh, I think that's Derek's time. Who comes to your council meetings.
Well worth it. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any more skill testing questions? Sorry, I shouldn't be laughing.
And I'm sorry, I do apologize. I'm just trying to get
No,
it straight in
that's
my
fine.
mind. The clerk's department,
Mhm.
wages are going up 75K from the previous year. We're not adding,
Some of them might be removed after this year.
not on year 2 or 3 or 4.
Well,
Still there.
and it's just because it's a percentage increase. So your 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
It's just a 1% increase on the existing budget. But I believe that it's actually going to go down the clerk's department a little bit next year.
But it's going up 75K.
And that is because of a budget item, like a carry. A carry forward, it's continuation.
It doesn't affect this budget. It was just the next one. Okay, thank you. And if I may, I'm sorry,
Keep going.
we've got really nothing better to do. Or at least I don't. Wages in the fire department,
Yes,
because of salary gapping, because the chief's wages at a higher level might not be obtained by the new chief coming in, and the new deputy chief would be at a lower, is these wages correct?
they are based on last year's people, so they could be modified. I don't know by how much without looking at each individual specific.
So that would show up in salary gapping. at
That
the
would
end
show
of
up
the
in
year.
salary gapping, yes.
Okay, I just knew there was going to be money there.
Okay.
There's really not a lot. It's just small. I was trying to get things clear in my head. I'm just gonna leave it at that. There's no big things I can knock out without pissing somebody off. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it.
We did. I will tell you, we tried very hard to review everything in total. We've missed maybe a few carry forwards to the following years, but I think we really did try to be as conservative as possible.
And for water and wastewater, is this the time or is that a separate talk today?
We can talk today, but Emily's not here to
Okay.
answer.
The question I had is over last year and this year, we seem to have money left over at the end of the year. It goes into reserve each time. And I know we need money in water and wastewater. Where I was going with this is because we are having a surplus each year on our billings versus our payout, do we have to stay at the 8%? Is it possible to go to 5%?
So Emily and I have talked about this a lot and we'd like to review in the summer. So currently we'd like to keep it at what it is right now. And then maybe hopefully draft a 5-year plan and really review the numbers to see where we're at. But for wastewater, we need all the money we can get. Water might be a little different. But we are, I think we alluded, that even with our 5-year capital, like our 5-year financial plan, we wanted to review it. We didn't want to change the pay, the charging of the invoices, because I know in December we had thought about commercial being a different number than residential. And I think it's a review that we have to undertake, and we just haven't got there yet.
Okay, I was just hoping to give some relief to the water and wastewater. I understand the needs. But because we're having a surplus each year and I see it in each year, was 3% would make a difference.
We can, but that would have to be another discussion
Okay,
at another
no, I
time.
just, putting the thought out there. I think there's room. You never know.
I would like to review it with Emily before moving to that.
Okay, can you tell me, Val, the reserves for fire trucks and the reserves for fleet, like for snow plows and everything? Because what I want to do, and you can certainly correct me if you want, we do have the $1 million in extra investment income that we've only touched to about 300,000 this year. And I know they're in 25 different reserves. I would like to use it, put that money towards a reserve in the fire department or the snowplow reserve, so it doesn't hit us this time next year, next fall, because we did cut a snowplow, 300,000 this year. That's going to hit us next year. We have, and I'm not talking the surplus if we have any. That's another day. That's another question. But I'm just wondering, could we amalgamate some of the extra income money into a fire truck reserve or a fleet reserve so it doesn't hit us all next year?
I'm gonna say yes, but I can tell you, I don't have the ending balances for 24 yet. I've been struggling more on trying to get the budget done before I looked at the year end. I can tell you currently, at the end of 2023, it looks like there was $934,000 in the fire reserve, fire and emergency management. I don't know if there's another one. And then 298,000 in the fleet reserve. I think it's really dependent on what I have at the end of the year and how everything allocates out. And then maybe we could have a discussion on the surplus allocation, and instead of me saying this is where we're going to put it, maybe we have a discussion at that time and you determine where we want to put it.
And it doesn't affect this year's budget. I'm just trying to help us out for next fall. The money keeps on building in the reserves. We're now up to a very healthy number, and I know a lot of it is already spent. But instead of it just piling up, I want to put it towards
The right place.
the right place, and I think that the fleet is the right place for next year to save you 2% on your next year's budget increase.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, it looks like we've run out of opportunities to save on this year's increase. Which, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And of course, not knowing what the surplus is yet, I would just add to Steve's list, perhaps put a little money away for Trowbridge Street if we have the funds to do so. I thought it was. And just one final question from me. We've got bridges 21 and 22 done, but I know they're not open yet because work needs to be done. And I just want to make sure that we're adequately funded in this budget to undertake whatever needs to happen there, Jeff. So I'll look to you to share with us what work needs to be done and if you've got adequate funding in your budget to do that.
Through your worship. Yeah, right now, the bridges are still closed. We need to put some granular material down there to smooth it all up from construction. We just haven't had time to do that with the winter coming in so heavy and the roads being so soft right now. The budget's there to address what we need to do for this year, to put it back into the state prior to the bridge closes. Closures.
Can we look at an opening date that would sort of coincide with the beginning of the agricultural season? Or
Yep, for sure, through your worship. We're just kind of waiting for half loads to finish up. We're gonna continue on doing roadside maintenance there and just getting the whole site cleaned up. And then the graders are gonna be out there in the next couple of weeks, trimming everything up. If we can get it looking good enough and feeling good enough, we'll open it up for sure.
Yeah.
And then leave the heavier granular materials till later on.
we would kind of like to have a ribbon cutting ceremony there for the simple reason that a lot of people have waited a long time for those bridges to open. And we've had to do this all by our own as a municipality with no cooperation from the border community or Grey County, even though one of the bridges seems to be theirs. So are we just about ready then to, sorry. Go on, go
I'm
ahead.
gonna prolong this to 5. I'd like to know about when the bridges are open, because I have the ribbon and I have the champagne.
And the scissors.
And the scissors, have it all. There's probably not the time to bring this up, parking revenue. During COVID, we started charging people to park at Memorial Park because we were invaded by Torontonians and there was no place for anybody else. Right now, do you have a figure on what we're bringing for parking revenue? Because right now, I believe we're spending double the amount on bylaw to get the parking revenue. Is it time for us to rethink and cancel this parking at the Memorial Park revenue? I believe it's time. Is there any appetite around the table to talk about that? It might affect the budget a little bit, but
I'm certainly hungry.
So I can tell you that it probably isn't gonna affect your budget by much. And the reason I'm saying that is because Memorial Park is treated as a revenue neutral. So all you're doing is removing it from the revenue and probably built in there, it's either we're balancing to transfer to reserves or funding from reserves. So I think it's probably like $10,000 to $15,000 possibly. I'm not sure much more than that. I'd have to get the number from.
I'm just thinking bylaw staff selling the tickets. I don't think it's worth it. And I don't think we should continue it. That's only my opinion.
I would defer to Rick and see if he has any comments about it.
Through you, your worship, Councillor Bartley, that is actually a good point, because we are actually in the process of reaching out to our, I guess, contractor that was supplying us with the parking software. So if that's the direction that council would like to do, then the sooner you make that decision, then we can head them off and save some money.
Is anybody against it? I'll bring a motion forward to cancel the parking fees at Memorial Park.
Okay, any discussion?
Is staff got anything against that motion?
We will work, Rick and bylaw will work together with it.
And bring it back at next meeting?
10,500 is the revenue item, 9.
Yeah, I'd have to know the figures, but I believe that we increased our bylaw costs dramatically when we brought the program in. And I've never been in favor of it. We're a tourist area, and it's a huge tourist turnoff.
As long as we're aware, like bylaw does more than just parking passes. So we just have to be cautious on
Yeah.
when we think about that and
Well,
reallocate.
we're probably gonna need,
STAs or,
we're probably gonna need the bylaw officers that we are lined up, you know, if we bring in an STA bylaw, so.
Just trying to free up
Which-
time, even staff
which-
time selling the tickets. Is that not a big thing at the office?
not any longer, because a lot of it's going to be moving online. Yeah. Any other questions?
So we have a motion on the floor. You're asking us to forget that for this moment.
You need a vote on the Memorial Park.
Yeah,
on the parking.
we can vote on that. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous.
And one last one.
Okay.
Be going out to Sarah. Salary grid review. Can you tell us our comparators?
Thank you, and through your worship to Councillor Bartley. So that is one of the joys of utilizing a third party is we don't know ahead of time what comparators they're going to use per se. They are municipal experienced review experts. And so they will be doing the comparators based on depending on how much money we had wanted to spend. You could go up to all 9 comparators if we wanted to within our Grey County. But again, there's a cost associated with that. So yeah, I don't know how much more I can tell you on that one. It's 1, 2, 3 kind of comparators, but equally looking at inflation, looking at the area growth for inflation between private and public. But they're going to take all those comparators into consideration when they provide the report back to us. But it's completely unbiased and based on the area.
I don't believe that we would have a say in it. Because if they come out and they skew at Town of Blue Mountains, Barrie, Collingwood, that's different than Grey Highlands, Georgian Bluffs, Chatsworth, it all touches us. So I can't believe we wouldn't have a say in it.
If I may, through your worship, that's a really good point. We will not have a say in this. This is what we don't want to have because we don't want that bias. If I can give any food for thought to council, our HR business partner did some research around this and understanding who we used as comparators before during our 21 review. And it was very concerning to me as a seasoned HR professional to see that one of the areas that was agreed to by council and staff at the time was the Muskokas, was a municipality up in the Muskokas. And although, we are a developed waterfront community, we are far from the Muskokas in that development piece of things. So that was our comparator, just to kind of put, so that you're seeing what apples to apples is. So again, their job is to be unbiased, to do the research, to look at the community that we're in, based on all the parameters we set, and for them to come back with an unbiased response based on all of those parameters. Thank you.
So any more questions?
Can I just ask a request now? I'm wondering if we're finished with discussing the budget, can we have a motion that directs us to finalize these numbers and bring back something for the April 7th meeting? Or is there more questions, or we're okay?
Is everybody satisfied? I'm not going to say happy, but satisfied with our rate? Okay, I see around the room, around the horseshoe, everybody's agreeable. So who would like to move that motion? Deputy Mayor, and the motion is that we are accepting the version 3 of the budget. Is that?
The motion would be direct staff to finalize the 2025 budget and bring it back to council for final approval on April 7th.
Okay. That's the earliest we can approve that. I think the important thing is that the information is finalized, that people know where we're going here.
Yes, that would make the most sense because the agenda for the 24th goes out tomorrow. So,
Okay.
and I think we got a mover. I think we still need a seconder.
Seconder then for the motion, Councillor Bell. Okay, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We're going to move out of committee of the whole, and we will be moving into a closed session. And I'd like to a brief recess between these two things. So do I have a mover and seconder to leave committee of the whole? Councillor Greenfield and Councillor Urick, all in favor? And we will be back to report in after the closed session. Welcome back, everyone. Be it resolved that Council of the Municipality of Meaford hereby we've moved out of committee of the whole, I beg your pardon. We're moving into a closed session at 3:22 PM with the interim CAO / treasurer / director of financial services, the director of community services and HR, and deputy treasurer and acting clerk in attendance to discuss A, personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees, specifically candidates for appointment to advisory committees, and B, personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees, specifically related to the recruitment of a CAO. So we'll be reporting out following this closed meeting. Yes, mover and seconder for this, moved by Councillor Forder, seconded by Councillor Urick. All in favor? Just reporting out of our closed meeting, council met in closed session to discuss candidates for appointment to advisory committees and also CAO recruitment. Direction was given to staff regarding advisory committee appointments and CAO recruitment. And with that, I'm adjourning today's special meeting.